Hello and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and I'm so happy that you guys came and joined us this week. If you don't know, Kalopsia essentially signifies the delusion of thinking things are more beautiful than they are. And so with this podcast, I kind of like to apply that concept, apply that sort of delusionality into everyday life because it is not easy, but there's a lot of beauty to be found between, and I think we can help each other out. So if that interests you, keep on listening, keep on watching if you're on YouTube, and don't forget to like, comment, whatever it is. All the engagement, I love to see it, and this week's episode is actually going to be inspired by a comment on one of the TikToks I posted. So let's dive into it. This episode that the clip was about was on our capacity for and our freedom to change our minds, especially when it comes to our goals, when it comes to our routines and all of these things that we have set up for ourselves. You know, it's okay to reassess and change your mind. But now, I initially responded to this TikTok comment, and I'll read it in a second, in a way that I now think might have been an oversimplification. So let's go into it now. So the comment was, do you have any tips on how to recognize when you should change your goal because it no longer excites you versus when you're in a tough phase of achieving it and you're just feeling discouraged? Now, I initially responded to this by saying, great question. I would say it depends on how each step makes you feel. In my experience, each step in a goal that's true to me remains exciting and rewarding, and that doesn't tend to be the case for ones not true to me. In a rut, it can feel frustrating, but not because you're not able to complete the step, it's because you're not hitting the goal. If you find yourself too focused on the goal, it might not be for you. So I had initially said this to the comment, and I was saying that there are two factors when it comes to distinguishing the validity of a goal to your current self versus having a goal that you're not hitting and feeling that frustration. So I was basically, the 2 points that I outlined here was trusting your intuition for one, and number two, how does each step in the process make you feel? But now, I think that this was an oversimplification for the simple reason that even with this podcast, it being my passion, it being really something that I want to build upon in the long term, there are thousands of occasions where I too feel unmotivated, when I too feel like I don't really want to record right now. What would I even talk about? You know, these types of things. And I wouldn't say that that necessarily means this goal isn't true to me. I think it is really easy for us all to slip into burnout or just feel like I don't know, something that I've personally been dealing with the past couple weeks is that I feel like a lot of my life is made up of routines, and I feel like the reason for that is I've been socializing less. I think that when you lose your sense of balance between your work, your routines and all of that, as well as your social life, your alone time as well, self-care rituals, all of those things, as soon as your balance gets thrown out of whack or one side gets a little bit more attention, I think it's really easy to fall into that kind of tough phase where you're thinking to yourself, wow, like I really don't feel like doing this. I'm completely unmotivated. And it's burnout. That's literally what it is. So I thought that we could kind of go back onto this topic and think to ourselves, what are the tools that we can use to really distinguish when we're really in a stage of burnout where we've lost our sense of balance, and when we are actually, our intuition is trying to tell us something and trying to tell us that this is not going to be the right goal for me. I'm going to need to pivot here. This is not working for me. And so I put together a little checklist for us that we can kind of go back on, and this is going to be the goal reassessment checklist. And I think that this is so useful, especially when it comes to thinking to yourself, wow, like I'm on this specific path, I need to get through this, and this, and so you put your head down, you put your head in the books, and you keep on pushing, and then you take a pause and you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this again? That's when we can come to this list. You can also come to this list if you're like, whoa, I thought I wanted to do this, but now I don't really think I want to, or I'm not really sure, come to the list. Or if you are really passionate about your project and you're just wondering, am I missing something? Should I pivot this way? Or is this really where I should stay? We can still use this checklist. So this is the goal reassessment checklist. So the first point on here is going to be reflecting on the why. Revisit your original goals. Why did you set them? Ask yourself, are these goals meaningful to me? How are they going to make me feel? Is that change something that is really important to me? Do I place a lot of value in that shift? Reflect on how achieving them aligns with your long-term vision. Going back to the law of assumption, are you able to really visualize yourself in that change state and think to yourself, wow, that's really what I want? Now, step 2 is going to be evaluate progress. List what you've accomplished so far towards that goal. Identify any specific roadblocks or challenges that you're facing. And also consider, are your expectations realistic or do they need readjustment? And I think that last week we talked about the example of trying to post a certain amount of YouTube videos per week, right? That was an example of a goal that you could set that maybe little you wanted to start a YouTube channel. So present you saying, okay, I'm going to post 4 YouTube videos per week. That is my goal. In doing that, I am going to sacrifice quality because I'm focusing on quantity. But now, is this realistic? Is that even realistic for me to post 4 videos a week? Do I want to be sacrificing the quality over the quantity? If I do, then you can keep going. If you don't, then maybe you pivot. Step 3 here is going to be assess your methods. Review your daily habits. Are they actively supporting your daily goals? Each day, are you doing one step forward? Are you taking one step forward into furthering this plan, furthering this goal? Or are you kind of slacking in that regard? Is your daily life going to facilitate your arrival to your dream reality, essentially? Identify the current strategies that you're using that might be feeling very overwhelming or kind of unsustainable. If you're finding yourself anxious by the goals that you've set for yourself, thinking, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. And I'll be totally transparent here. This was me. If you guys were listening to that episode, I think it was 2 months back, but I was telling my friend, I'm really stressed because I need to record this video by this time. I need to then edit it by this time. I need to hit this. And it was a Tuesday and I post my videos on Fridays. And she was like, Sydney, take a step back for a second. Take a step back. You've got 3 more days to do this recording. You're actually fine. You're actually fine. Sometimes it can be in your head. So where are you making those hard limits? What are your target, goals, your target segments towards that goal? And are they sustainable for you? Can you make them more sustainable for yourself? If you're finding that there are things that aren't working right, to make them more sustainable for yourself, what are some new approaches, some new tools, maybe some new purchases that you could do that will facilitate your journey? A lot of the time, I think that, I haven't done an episode on money really, but something that's really, really at the forefront of my brain recently is that you need to be unafraid to spend money that's going to save you time, especially when it comes to creative work or maybe a business or something that you're trying to start, or there's a few parts of your day that are kind of are known to take you a lot of time. For example, if it's cooking every night, what are some things that you can do that are going to facilitate that journey for you? If it's me with clips, clipping things for my podcast, that used to take about 5 hours out of my week, just cutting up my videos, finding little segments, trying to add in the captions, fixing the captions. Having to do that took 5 to 6 hours literally every week. And I found, a tool, an AI tool that's about $15 a month, saves me 5 to 6 hours out of my day. What are some alternatives that are available to you that can help you alleviate some of this pressure when it comes to setting out for your goals, and that can help kind of delay this burnout? Now, the next thing is to check in with your energy levels. Now, this is where I'm really going to, once again, suggest journaling. It doesn't need to be the morning pages. It doesn't need to be like such a strict routine or anything like that. But I would really recommend having a dedicated time in your day to just write down how you're feeling. How are you feeling regarding to this goal? How can you try to alleviate some stress in this certain area? Being able to come back to yourself and reflect on your day, your goal, your progress, having that sort of reflection being a part of your routine of self-care rituals is going to increase your self-awareness. And self-awareness is the biggest thing you need when it comes to properly assessing your progress towards a certain goal, your regression from a certain goal. You need that self-awareness to even set the goals in the first place. So incorporate something that's going to allow you to reflect, whether that's a therapy appointment, whether that conversation with a parent or a friend, or sometimes that can also be kind of like a burden. You don't want them to have to constantly just be listening to you rant at them. That's why sometimes journaling, just writing things down, you could even bullet point it. You could do whatever format you'd like. It's so good to have that kind of moment to come back to yourself and reassess with your emotions. The other thing that this is going to allow you to do, once you build that kind of habit of checking in on yourself, it's going to even facilitate more your ability to check in with yourself and your ability to give yourself what you need. So if you're journaling and you're saying to yourself, wow, this 4 days a week posting schedule is honestly really not easy. So I think I'm either going to have to drop this habit, or maybe I'm going to have to add in a nightly bath. Or, that's a weird example. But, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I want to work out 5 days a week, but you're noticing that your body is literally not able to kind of handle that and bounce back the way it should. What kind of routines can you incorporate that are going to allow your body to recover? What are you going to do in that sense? So it can really guide you in your next course of action when it comes to your self-care, when it comes to your rest routine. The other thing that self-awareness and checking in on yourself in this way is going to help you with is that it's going to help you make that distinction between, am I overworking myself, or do I need more discipline? Because I think that's the crux of that question, right? The crux of that question at the beginning from the TikTok was, how can I tell if I'm actually exhausted or not inspired by the specific goal, or if I really am just in a non-motivational period where I'm just not, I just am lazy, or not lazy, but I'm unmotivated and unable to hit this. That's where you're going to be able to find that out for yourself, because nobody else is going to be able to say that for you. And I think it can only come from repeated introspection, because a lot of the time, I know that a lot of us that journal, sometimes you can almost lie to yourself and you're like, yeah, I'm doing so good, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I know that a lot of people lie in therapy. I know that that's a trend, not a trend, but a trend in human behavior, right? A lot of people lie in therapy to kind of make themselves seem as though they've got it together better than they really do. And a lot of people lie in their journals. But the more that you write it down, the more that you come back day after day after day after day, or week after week, you can do weekly check-ins too, more that you are able to come back to yourself, the more honest you're going to have to be, because it's going to be less easy to continue to lie to yourself about how you're overworking yourself and how exhausted your schedule makes you, especially when you have the evidence of this being a target cycle or behavior cycle that you are capable of achieving. In other words, if you say to yourself, I am capable of posting 1 video a week for 6 weeks, I'm capable of doing that, and these are the reasons why. And then the next week you're like, I'm exhausted, I couldn't do it, I just wasn't able to do it. The week after that, again, you say, oh, I was exhausted, I couldn't do it. You're going to have that evidence, and it's going to give you that kind of self-accountability. It's going to give you that self-accountability where you're really going to be able to see all the evidence of how much work you're actually putting in, or how much you are standing in your own way and self-sabotaging. You're going to be able to have that self-assessment. Now, the next thing on the list is to simplify and prioritize. If you're like me, right, because I honestly think I'm guilty of this, is that I set way too many goals sometimes. So I think what we need to do is you write them all down and think to yourself, what is the next right step for me? What can I do now that's going to help me hit the rest of these later? What is my priority? What change in mindset or change in career, any type of shift? What is most valuable to me right now, and focus yourself on those. Because the more that you spread yourself thin, the less effective you're going to be in any of these individual areas, and the more self-sabotage you're going to feel, the more burnout you're going to feel, and the more you're not going to want to achieve it. It's also good when you're doing this prioritization step is to break them down into even smaller steps. So we've talked about this extensively when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to routine building, but beyond that, you also want to kind of evaluate what in your routine might be contributing to your burnout, to your inability to hit your goals. Are you not sleeping enough? Because I recently have realized that I was sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. Women need about 9 to 10 hours of sleep. I either didn't know it or refused to believe it for some reason, but there is a noticeable difference in my productivity, in my mood, and all the above. So honestly, think to yourself, what am I doing here that might actually be draining my energy and standing in my way? What are these steps that I might have, held on to that maybe aren't necessary anymore? Now, the next thing on this reassessment checklist is to seek inspiration. Reflect on your past wins. What worked before? What made you feel stuck? Revisit old books and podcasts, YouTube channels. We've talked about this when you're thinking about visualization, the law of assumption. You want to feel that sense of inspiration that's going to excite you to even work on these goals in the first place. If you are just thinking to yourself with, the law of just because or whatever, like we read about one time, the law of just because, I'm doing this just because I'm expected to, just because this is what I'm supposed to do, just because it's the next step, whatever. It's good to surround your brain and your thoughts in that kind of visualization and remember why you're doing this in the first place. And that's where that excitement to even push forward is going to come from. Now, we also need to practice self-compassion. Now, here you're going to have to think about yourself that you're going to need to be more kind with yourself in the ebbs and flows of your motivation, because no human is going to want to work and grind constantly, day in, day out, 365 days a year. That doesn't exist. And that's why they say when you are wanting to be this active person, you need to do it when you're tired. You need to do it when you're hungry. You need to do it when you're angry. You need to do it when you're happy. You need to do it when you're weak. You need to do it when you're strong. That's the basis of discipline. But the reality of discipline is that you are going to have these ebbs and flows in emotion, in strength, in willingness to show up. So sometimes it's good to force ourselves when you're trying to build that momentum and build the muscle of discipline in the first place. But sometimes it's important to know when it's important to really just let yourself take a breather. But again, no one's going to know that but you. And I think that the best piece of advice when it comes to having that assessment of whether you're overworked and burnt out or lacking motivation is going to be that introspection, those check-ins, those journaling periods where you're able to kind of have that assessment for yourself. And now the last thing on this list is going to be set a reset plan. You want to feel as though your new plan and your new goals are some things that are really achievable for you, that are not going to exhaust you, that have a good sense of balance between reaching that goal, socializing, having your alone time, feeding yourself well, and, sleeping enough. And it's hard to fit all of that in. So it's when you are able to write it all down, really look at it objectively and think to yourself, can I do this? Can I do this? If the answer is no, we go back to the beginning. We start again. If the answer is yes, you now have a better plan and a better routine that's going to allow you to have those types of breathers, but also being able to exercise that discipline. And I think that we need to kind of learn to incorporate this goal reassessment checklist. I think maybe twice a month. Is that too often? I'd say twice a month. We need to come back in every 2 weeks. You could do it more or less, whatever works for you. So I don't know why my nose is so itchy today. Sometimes when I speak, I have to like itch my nose. I don't know what is happening, you guys, but anyway, that's besides the point. If you've noticed me itching my nose, that's why. Like sometimes when I record, it just gets itchy. It's really weird. Anyway, yeah, I think that we need to incorporate this every 2 weeks, and or you could even do it shorter, and it's going to help you build that momentum as well. Just having those actionable steps, having it all written down with a clear vision of how this is going to help you get one step closer to your goal, but also allowing yourself that kind of space to breathe and just enjoy your life, because we're not machines at the end of the day. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and I love it when you guys come on the TikToks. If you also want to have your comment kind of featured in the episodes, you know what to do. But don't forget to reach out. It's at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD on Instagram and TikTok, and at Sydney Jotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Now, thank you so much for watching or listening this week, you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.